Ashley from Notjustboxing here with Coach Adam. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, Ash.
Good, good. And how's your summer been?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, it's been filled with a lot of boxing, really. To be honest, we've had a few little excursions out with the kids, but obviously my son's boxing, so we tend to orientate a lot of our stuff around boxing. So it tends to be at sparring days and trips out to see some of our boxing family, you know. So yeah, it's been okay. We've had a nice break.
Well, thank you so much for having us down today. We've really enjoyed being in the club. I can't believe just the energy of it. You know, the kids are great. You've got so many coaches, which is very surprising compared to the student ratio.
I'm just one of a large team. Obviously, head coach Stevie Walters is one of the main reasons that I come over to the club. Obviously, he's former head coach of Repton. He's had some of the Repton team migrate over to the Lion Club with him. Obviously, with Steve's experience and knowledge of the game, and obviously then pro links as well. It was something that I felt could further myself as a coach, and also probably the right location for my son to be at. So, and also we've got family ties here. My brother-in-law Ryan, he's also a coach of the club. So my nephews are here. So like Danny's with his cousins, and we've got some nice ties here. So they've got a very strong coaching team. Obviously, I'm just one of many. But we've got a really strong squad. So I'm looking forward to the new season.
And what got you into coaching?
So I actually unfortunately had to stop boxing quite early. I was unlucky enough to be born with a disorder called occipital congenital toxoplasmosis, which unfortunately meant I was losing a lot of my sight and going blind when I was in my teens. So only having a few amateur fights myself, I then obviously started losing some of my sight, which meant I couldn't pass a medical anymore. But I had a passion for the sport. I was actually taking my brother-in-law Ryan to lots of different clubs. He was boxing for England at the time, and I was taking him to Sammy Montague up in Kidbrooke. So I was only 19 at the time. So I started volunteering up there with the head coach up there, Mickey Gregory, asked me to start helping out, which at the time obviously I wasn't a coach then. I was just a kid who loved his boxing. And it really, after sort of spending time with fighters, I realised how much I could still get the buzz for boxing from coaching. You know, so it wasn't long before I realised that I could get something more from the sport and not just boxing myself, you know.
And when did you get your coaching qualifications?
So it actually took me a few years to get my coaching qualifications because it wasn't as strict as it is now. I actually spent a lot of years without any coaching badges. I'm still doing corners, but I just never got the qualifications. I got my first qualification when I was at Bellows Park. I was the head junior coach there at Bellows Park in Essex, and I got my first qualification there, and then followed on with my level 2 when I came over to Kent. So I'd already been coaching 12 or 13 years at that point when I became a level 2, and the reason I'd done the level 2 is because I wanted to open my own gym. So I actually left Holland Park in Basildon when that was the last club I was at in Kent. In Essex, sorry. I've been at various clubs across London and Essex at the time. I was a senior coach over at Holland Park, and I left Essex to move over for work, and I made the decision that was the time to open my own club. So I opened Palmarsh ABC. We started from scratch. I was the only coach, and I was actually we was a completely free club at the time, so I never charged. It was free to all participants, and we managed to maintain that for about 18 months. We was in a primary school. We was very fortunate to be in Palmarsh Primary School. They gave us the premises for nothing, and Jamie Leach, the headmaster there, was very supportive of us and give us. He was really the reason we was able to do what we did. We give all of his school kids free boxing, and we started to develop within the community. And unfortunately, we got to the point where we'd sort of outgrown the school premises. So we moved into our own premises. At that point, I had to make it a charge club because we just couldn't get enough sponsorship to cover the bills. Which we still kept it as cheap as what we could. We used to deliver 16 sessions a month, and for the under 11s, it was £10 a month. You know, so what's that, 60p a session or something like that. You know, we kept it as cheap as possible because for me, boxing isn't about money. The kids that need boxing the most are the kids that haven't got any money. They haven't got a family that can pay the fees. You know, so in all honesty, probably 20-30% of my kids never used to pay. But that's the way I always wanted boxing. That's what boxing is for me. You know, it was always what you can deliver for a young person and what they can get from it, rather than running it like a business. Boxing isn't a business for me. It never has been. You know, the primary function for boxing is what a young person can get out of the sport. The mental development, the social development, and the walking out of the gym with a better attitude than they walked in. And for me, that's the priority. The success you can deliver in boxing is a byproduct of having a good attitude, you know, and that's the baseline for me.
That snowball effect of your coaching to these kids, them learning discipline, them learning to strengthen their mind and body. I'm sure you have seen so many good stories of these troubled kids as well. Absolutely. Some of them with sometimes too much energy.
I've still got. I mean, I've been coaching a very long time now. I've been coaching 23 years. I've got kids that are grown men now that still speak to me. You know, for me, the kids, I treat them like they're my children. So I've got lots of my fighters' jobs, and you get closer to some fighters than you do to others. And for some kids it is a hobby, you know, and you develop a relationship, but they go off and, you know, they move into other areas where some fighters, the boxing really does change the direction of their life. And I've still got fighters now who from 20 years ago still speak to me, and, you know, they ring me up and they want to tell me their news, and that for me, them relationships are what boxing is all about. I've got some fighters that they're not angels now, but they certainly would have been in a hell of a lot worse place if it wasn't for the sport. And that is what keeps me in the sport, because at times it drives me mad. There's a reason I've got no hair. But I certainly, when I was running my own club, at weeks I was doing 40 or 50 hours a week unpaid on top of a full-time job. But when you see the byproduct of what that time's doing, it's very difficult to walk away from that. You know, like for me, a lot of kids don't get the consistency indoors. You know, like they don't necessarily get the love that they should get, and they look for that in other areas. And when you've got a boxing gym, you as a coach, you can't not be there. You know, like you've got to be that support system. You've got to make sure that you're consistent and you deliver what you say you're going to do, because without that, the kids are getting what they get indoors. You know, like and that doesn't breed good habits. You know, and that for me, you need to show the kids what. You need to lead the way.
Yeah, it's nice what you said there. So when I reflect on when I boxed at university, my coach, James Connor, he shaped my university. He's the reason why I got a first. Yeah. You know, I was so disciplined with the sport in the second and third year that it helped me in so many other ways. And I've got life skills now, 10 years later, that I still use to this day. And it's helped me grow this brand. It's helped me everything. And it's all come from that discipline.
It's so transferable to other areas of life. This baseline of attitude and discipline can be used, and it does. It just develops. You develop strong kids, you develop strong adults. You know, and that's one thing that we fall down with in society these days, is that we just don't develop children and give them the life skills that they need in order to be well developed adults. But the boxing is still one of the main areas that we're still delivering that. And I think mostly across the sport that's the case. There's very few gyms where money's the predominant factor. I think that most people, look, we're all volunteers. Amateur boxing is full of people that want to give up their time, and they give it up for the right reasons. There's very few people in amateur boxing that do it for the accolation or for the money, you know, because there's no money in it for one, unless you're doing 51 at ones a week. And yeah, for me, a fighter deserves time. And if you want to develop a fighter, then they need your time and they need it for free.
What attributes would you say make a perfect fighter for you to train?
Do you know what? I've had some phenomenal athletes over the years. In all the time I've been coaching, I think natural fighters are very rare. I've had maybe 2 or 3 fighters where you can give them a verbal instruction and they could go and deliver it straight away. Very few. But they're not necessarily the fighter. They might win national titles, but they're not necessarily the fighters that stick with the boxing. For me, dedication and commitment is the primary factor. Now, I've got a fighter out there who you interviewed earlier, who was one of the most unnaturally talented fighters I've ever had, but he's now developing as a very well-rounded fighter because of his sheer commitment. And that, to me, is, I would take 10 committed fighters over 5 talented fighters every time. because with commitment and dedication and that resolve, you'll develop. You know, if you've got someone who's cruising through on natural ability, that will only take you so far. And once they get to the point, you get to the point where you're an elite and everyone's got natural ability. You know, and at that point, what do? You know, you tend to find most of them talented fighters walk away from the sport.
Yeah. So boxing as a fighter and then moving to a coach, it changes completely. Obviously, especially where your son boxes, your mindset on the sport must have taken a complete change.
So I've been coaching since I was relatively young anyway, so that mindset's developed over a long period of time for myself. I think what I realised quite early on was that success wasn't necessarily what I enjoyed most about boxing. I used to enjoy the relationships and the interactions that I built up with fighters, and that, you know, like little Johnny came into the gym and he was awful in school and he was getting himself into trouble all the time, and then 6 months later he's saying please and thank you, and, you know, like, he's doing well in school. They're the wins that I remember. You know, like, I've had national champions over the years in pretty much every category. I've not had a senior champion. I've had a senior development but not a senior ABA champion. And for me, some of the most important wins are the ones where the kid's done nothing in boxing really, but you've seen a development and a change in a child that is stuck with them into adulthood. And when they still ring you up and they say, "Oh, I've seen kids in the street when they're 19, 20 years old, years after I've coached them, and they've stopped and said, you changed their lives." And that is something that's what I enjoy. That's what I love most about the sport.
For anyone that's considering to start boxing, what advice have you got for them?
Find your local gym. You know, don't worry how much support you get from indoors. I walked into a boxing gym on my own because I didn't have the support of indoors. And what you've got to remember is that every person starts in the same place, regardless of age. Whether you're 8 years old or 28 years old, you're on the first run of the ladder. And everyone in that boxing gym has been on that first run, so they all understand. So for me, just get yourself into the boxing gym and you'll find you've got more support and more in common with people than you realise. Just make that first jump.
And lastly, what advice would you give your younger self as a coach compared to now?
Buy more property, probably. I think for myself, try and strike a bit more of a balance. I threw myself into boxing, spent a hell of a lot of time in gyms, on the road. Probably should have spent a bit more time indoors, and struck a bit more of a balance. I think I gave far too much of myself to some people that didn't necessarily warrant the time, because I wanted to be that good coach instead of being a little bit more selective with the people that I worked with. That said, I haven't really got any regrets. You know, like, every part of my journey has been a development, and I've still got a lot of developing to do as a coach. That's why I've come to Lion, you know, like, to work under Steve Waters, to learn a little bit more technically, you know, and pick some stuff up that isn't in the kit bag yet. It's not just about fighter development, it's about coach development. You know, we develop with the fighters. And there's some fighters that have taught me more than any other coach has, you know. So when I look back, is there anything I'd change? Probably not. You know, I've enjoyed every part of my boxing. Holland Park was a highlight for me. We had a fantastic team there. We had a lot of champions there, but a great team. And Lion for me is feeling like that did. And I think that we're going to have a few happy years here, and I'm going to enjoy my time here.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks very much for coming down, Ash.
My name is Dennis McCann, professional boxer for Frank Moore and MTK Global. This is Fortress Boxing. A lot more protection, it's a no-brainer around your thumbs, around your knuckles, around your wrist. That's exactly where the problems are. They're very compact, so I feel like I'm punching hard with them on as well. And I feel like when you got sparring 14, 16 ounce gloves, the smaller wraps can't really, they're too small for the gloves, that makes sense. So these are a bit bigger, and they're getting the gloves a bit more, they're making them more compact. 1, 2, hook. 1, 2, hook. Go.